Tonight we acknowledge that we gather on unceded lands of Stolo and Salish peoples. These First Nations preserved, cultivated, and beautified this part of our world for over 10,000 years. We're deeply grateful for this bountiful gift, this gracious generosity, far beyond what mere words can convey, as we long for the day when we're fully reconciled with all our relations. Okay, I'm just curious, have either of you heard about, before this course, Aurobindo or Auroville in, or Mirra Alfassa? You wouldn't know her by that name. So this is completely new. Mm-hmm. This lady and this, okay. All right, let me start very informally. I'll be a lot simpler tonight. I won't try to cover that thick handout I gave you with small print. But, you know, I lived in California during the late 1960s and early 1970s. And at that time, people were experimenting with different spiritual movements quite a bit. I think the same thing was happening in Vancouver at that same time, right? There was a lot of interest in Aurobindo and Auroville, which is the name of the ashram, or you might say spiritual community of this lady who we're studying, Mirra Alfassa, who later became called the Mother. And she paired up with Aurobindo. He's a well-known, some people would call him a guru or a teacher, spiritual leader, philosopher. Okay, let me just go down some of the notes of this first page here. You know, she lived a long time. I'm going to show you, you see this lady? There she is. This is in 1978. So this was the centenary of her birth. She was born in 1878. So India really respected her quite a bit, India. So they made a stamp with her picture on it. All right, and here's how she looked maybe at about late 80s, early 90s, Mirra Alfassa. Mm-hmm. So she became very well known in India, even though she was born in Paris, France, of parents who were from Turkey and Egypt, Jewish parents from Turkey and Egypt. But she became very famous because she had these long discussions with Indira Gandhi. So Indira Gandhi became Prime Minister of India, you know, one of the first Prime Ministers of India. And they had enough conversations to fill up 7 volumes. Can you imagine this lady who we're studying, the Mother, or Mirra Alfassa, and Indira Gandhi chatting so much that the recordings of all their very substantive statements amount to 7 volumes. Okay, so that's a little bit about her background. She also met the Dalai Lama. She met Rabindranath Tagore. You might have heard of Tagore, a great Indian writer. She met him too. She met Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, and the Dalai Lama. And another lady she met was Margaret Woodrow Wilson, who was the daughter of the President of the United States, you know, in the in the second decade of the 20th century. And this Margaret Woodrow Wilson became like First Lady. She was the daughter of Woodrow Wilson, but she served in the role when her mother died as First Lady. But she visited Auroville and became very close to the Mother who we're studying and stayed there the rest of her life. She became a leader in that town of Auroville, which is Pondicherry. Pondicherry is a French, you know, part of the French part of India. So it's in the southeastern corner, a little bit north of where Sri Lanka is, on the coast. That's where Pondicherry is. And inside Pondicherry is Auroville. That's the name of the ashram or spiritual community that this lady founded. And it's still there. It's still there. Okay. I'm reading here that she became the spiritual collaborator with Aurobindo. They together taught integral yoga. That's a special kind of yoga. We'll look at that. I'm reading from the 1968 Charter of Auroville. Auroville, these are the words of the mother, or Mirra. Auroville belongs to all people who are willing to strive toward divine consciousness. It will be a place of unending education, both spiritual and technological. It will build on the past, but intends to hasten the evolution of humankind. It will be an experiment focused upon a living embodiment of an actual human unity. So, the question, can we all get along? Like, everybody wonders that. And she and Aurobindo, her partner, they wanted to create a spiritual community that was also practical, that had ordinary education, technological education, social education, cultural education, but combined with that would be spiritual education, including yoga and meditation and study of all the world's religions. And the goal was to create a city to which everyone could come from wherever they were. And it was not part of any single country. So they like to think of Auroville as a city in the world. Can you imagine? Like, not only in India, a universal town dedicated to the evolution of consciousness. Dorothy, 1/3 of the way down.
Harold, I didn't get the invitation till about 10 minutes before, and I don't have the notes. I apologize.
Boy.
Somehow or other, I think what happened was maybe Kathy sent the invitation on another email address that I don't have. I don't know what happened there, but I don't have the notes, and I apologize.
Oh boy. Okay.
That's not going to be easy. I could duck out and I can print them off. Can you just carry on and I'll come back?
Carry on with this, Sukhmani.
Yes.
We'll wait for you. Well, I don't know what to say.
How about you share your current email address and I'll forward it to you.
Oh, okay. Oh,
maybe just enter it in the chat and I'll forward you the email.
Okay, but I think I have the notes. I do have the notes in the email that Kathy sent.
She just hasn't typed them up yet.
I haven't
made a copy.
them. No, I haven't made a copy.
Okay, makes sense.
So I'll come back.
Okay.
All right, wait.
Minutes. I will be back.
I'll interview Sukhmani more.
Okay.
She's such an interesting person with all these jobs she has.
So what do you used to do, Harold? Like,
I was a Unitarian minister for 25 years, and I've always been interested in interfaith because I had a Jewish father and a Spanish Catholic mother, both of them very world-minded. So I grew up in the US and moved to Canada maybe 33 years ago. I loved Vancouver. I had visited here, this area, and I thought, I got to move there someday. I love the fact that people come from all over the world around here. So I've always been interested, how are we all going to get along, right? And I thought, I want to move to Vancouver and do a lot of interfaith, intercultural, multicultural. I love the fact that Canada had this multicultural policy where you actually welcome diversity from around the world. That's fantastic. So I wanted to move here for about 10 years before I moved. And I became a Unitarian minister. I served in that role for 25 years. But I've always been sort of a teacher. I've been fascinated with world religion, different cultures, world history. So you could say I call myself a community interfaith educator. I have to have a title for what I do. I design courses and I teach them. And I was doing it in person before the pandemic. And now, so I had to jump online, try to do what I could online. And some of the classes are tiny and some are big. Some can have 40 or 50 people, both in person or online. So that's what I am. I'm a teacher of world religions and world history, and with a lot of interest in women's place, in history and how it has been ignored, right? And this is an attempt to sort of, balance it a little bit, show that women have been important. Before you got the job, we looked at a lady named Mirabai, who, was Hindu, but she was at the time of the birth of the Sikh faith, right? And so some of her interests were just like some of the people that end up building the Sikh scriptures, like Kabir. Her writing was like Kabir, and she had a lot of interest in music and chanting. We studied her as one of the mystics in this course, and it was an opportunity to learn a little bit about the founding of the Sikh faith, as drawing from Hindu and Islamic and Sufi roots. Anyway, so this course has been like an opportunity to learn about religious history through the eyes of women and through their role. Oh, look, my goodness, our cup suddenly is running over. This is Joan. Joan Morris is coming, my friend in Langley. And
Hello.
Bev got back somehow.
Wow.
Oh, there she is.
Bev, can you hear? Can you
Yes.
hear?
Perfect.
And we can hear you. What about you, Joan? Can you hear us? Not yet.
She's connecting the
The
audio.
audio. Okay.
devices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me yet?
Yes, Dorothy, I heard you loud and clear.
Well, I don't want to even touch anything because I went to print it and my printer says you're out of ink. So, but what I've got is I've got it open and I can see but I can't see anybody else at the same time. Whoever's speaking.
Yeah, we can have it all. Okay.
Now,
So
do you want me
but
to
you can
read
see
some?
page 1. You can
Yes.
see.
Yes, I can.
All right. I'm going to refer to just a few parts of this because we've got to simplify. We're simplifying.
Okay.
All right, friends. I was introducing this lady, Mirra Alfassa, who's known to history as the mother. And I showed people this picture of her.
Oh,
This is a stamp in India. How famous do you have to be to get on a stamp for all of India? The answer is very famous. She was on a first name personal basis with Indira Gandhi. They talked about moral and spiritual matters and the state of the world, the need to have a global culture and that sort of thing. Okay, so this lady had some friends in high places like Indira Gandhi, the Dalai Lama, Rabindranath Tagore, etc. Nehru, the founder, first prime minister of India. Yet her background, this is to me is utterly amazing. You could say she was Jewish because her mother and father were both Jewish, but her mother was from Egypt and her father from Turkey. And she grew up in France and she was very wealthy. Now, a lot of wealthy people, sometimes you might say they don't have to work. She didn't have this attitude. She studied constantly. She was trying to understand the world. She was spiritually oriented from a very young age. She felt that she had a very special role. 1/3 of the way down on page 1, I'm going to read an overview of her point of view. This is her outlook. Overview. Humanity is evolving toward a new consciousness, which will reflect an innate divinity. Humanity is evolving to a new consciousness that will reflect an innate divinity. Spirit, mind, and matter are all engaged in this progression towards divinization, becoming more godlike. This process can be hastened by spiritually alert working in the world. Humanity is not the last rung of the terrestrial creation. Evolution continues, and man will be surpassed. It is for each individual to decide whether he wants to participate in the advent of this new species. So she's saying humanity is evolving toward a higher level of consciousness. It's like we're almost becoming a new creation. So this is highly evolutionary. Her thinking is very evolutionary. And so she was very interested in evolution, both physical or biological evolution, cultural evolution, most especially spiritual evolution. All right. So I wrote in the middle of the first page some things she said. I want to study some of what she said. We're looking at 10 little passages. Who's willing to read? Dorothy or Bev, you're willing to read? Can you read? It says childhood and youth right in the middle of page 1. These are things she said. Can you read where she says, I started contemplating?
I started contemplating from the age of 4. A very brilliant light descended over my head. Gradually, I began to feel that I must do some tremendously great work that nobody knows yet. Between the ages of 11 and 13, a series of spiritual experiences revealed to me not only the existence of God, but man's possibility of uniting with him, of realizing him integrally in consciousness and action, of manifesting him on earth in a life divine. Nearly every night, I went out of my body and rose straight up above the house and city, very high above. Then I saw myself clad in a magnificent golden robe. As I rose higher, the robe would stretch, spreading out in a circle around me to form a kind of immense roof over the city. Then I would see multitudes coming out of every side. They would gather under the outspread robe, begging for help. In reply, the robe, supple and alive, would extend towards each one of them, comforting or healing. She had visions of a dark Asiatic figure who she called Krishna.
Okay, this is really important what she's sharing. Like, this is the foundational vision she had as a teen. She's supposed to do something very important. She sees herself sort of serving the multitudes with this giant robe, this magnificent golden robe. So, wow. Okay, and then, it says at age 15, she wrote an essay in school, and she called it The Path of Later On, the path of the future, in other words, about spiritual evolution. Here's one little thing she said in that essay: come to the beautiful, the good, the true. Do not be misled by indolence or laziness. Come to the future. So she had this, from the get-go, early in her life, she had this sense of humanity is becoming something else, something greater. She's very interested in spiritual development. Okay. And she married a guy, we're going to pass over these details, who had a lot of interest in occult spirituality. We'll say more about what that means. So she married a guy with a lot of spiritual interests. And she came across something called theosophy. Have people heard of Madame Blavatsky and theosophy? Yeah, Bev has. Okay. This is probably too complicated. I'm just going to say she really delved into all this stuff. Kabbalism, which is Jewish mysticism, the occult, theosophy, oh my God. Something called the cosmic tradition, which is very related to all this. If you remember Hypatia, the second woman we studied in this course, she was totally into something called Neoplatonism. All this stuff is very, very similar. The basic idea is that we come from the one creator, the one source, and slowly we're winding our way back and progressing toward our origins. So it is called the circle of existence. We come from above, and here we are on the earth, and our task is to evolve upward again. Spiritual progress toward the one, to return to the source. Okay, so that's an idea that has been around in history a long time, part of world religions, part of mysticism. And what I'm telling you is this lady dug into that stuff like you wouldn't believe, totally immersed in it. To me, it's interesting. And I told you she's from Paris, and Paris, a very sophisticated city, and her parents were very wealthy. So she could meet all kinds of people. Among the people she met was Abdu'l-Baha, who's the son of the founder of the Baha'i faith. She met him when Abdu'l-Baha was visiting Paris, and they connected. In fact, Abdu'l-Baha felt sick when one night he was supposed to give a talk, and he says to Mirra, this lady we're studying, "Why don't you give the talk?" And she said, first she didn't said, I can't do that. We're learning about your faith. She says, well, he said to her, you're interested in truth, and so am I. Speak truth as you understand it. So he talks her into giving the talk. You know, I did research on this. This Abdu'l-Baha never asked anyone else to give a talk for him. He only did that once, and it was with this lady.
Wow.
She said really nice things about Abdu'l-Baha. She said, what a sincere man. I've never saw anyone so spiritually pure. So to Baha'is, this little story is very interesting. What were you going to say, Dorothy? Yeah.
No, I'm loving this. This is so interesting. Go ahead.
So she is a very interesting lady, this Mirra. We'll call her Mirra, and later on she's going to be called the mother. But right now she's still Mirra. Now at the bottom of page 1, who's willing to read? Dorothy, can you read that?
Yes.
It says, tell us, in 1914, age 36, what happened to her?
With her husband in Pondicherry, met Aurobindo.
Yeah.
His presence is enough to prove that a day shall come when darkness shall be transformed to light, and the divine reign shall actually be established on earth. I am being born into a new life. Methods of the past can no longer be of any use. An immense gratitude arises in my heart. I seem to have arrived at the threshold which I long sought. When Aurobindo
What? Yeah, the word is what there? What?
Oh, what? Sorry, but yes. Aurobindo represents in the world's history is not a teaching, not even a revelation. It is a decisive action direct from the Supreme.
And read that about Aurobindo there in bold. Could you read? Yeah.
Aurobindo saw India's spiritual heritage as an integral part of divine evolution. He was a Cambridge-educated bridge builder between East and West, had a vision of Krishna while imprisoned, changing him from a political to a spiritual revolutionary.
So she met this guy, Aurobindo, and he's very interesting too. And they became like one being. Each of them said, we're all one soul.
Mm-hmm.
We're the masculine and feminine part of one being. That's how they looked at it. Okay, and this Aurobindo is amazing. He's Oxford educated. Did I say Oxford? I mean Cambridge.
Cambridge, yes.
And he totally mastered everything at Cambridge, and then he later combined it with, he studied Indian heritage too. So Aurobindo was a combination of East and West, and he believed in evolution too. He studied Darwin, he studied Henry Bergson, who was a philosopher of evolution, and then he interpreted Hindu faith as all about spiritual evolution, right? Lifting up humanity. So he thought all of India has a responsibility to lift up the world with its spiritual wisdom. That's India's gift.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but India lacks Western ideas, which he really absorbed. So you see, so Aurobindo and the mother tried to combine East and West as a universal spiritual advancement program. Wow. Okay. On the second page, I list some of the works of Aurobindo. The big one, just remember this one work. It's called The Life Divine. The Life Divine. And it's such a beautiful idea. The idea is we human beings have to grow upward while God is coming downward, and we're going to meet right in the middle. What a fantastic idea. Anyway, so that's called the life divine. So in other words, human life can be lifted up to a much higher level where everyone is cared for, where the whole world is one family. where everything is universal. Everything known to humanity belongs to all children. So these are some of the ideas that are being birthed, right, from the meeting of Aurobindo and Mirra. What am I going to skip? Okay, on page 2, it says, Bev, backward, you see where it says 1920 to 1973?
Okay.
Ages 42 to 95. This
95. Good for
95.
her.
Look at her picture here. See, this is when she's in the late 80s and early 90s, Mirra Alfassa.
Wow.
And remember, this is how, see, for the stamp, they took her when she was 60. Look how good she looked when she was 60. All right. So can you read what it says there? Lived permanently in Pondicherry. What did she say?
I belong to no nation, no civilization, no society, no race, but to the divine. I obey no master, no ruler, no law, no social convention, but the divine. To him I have surrendered all, will, life, and self. For him I am ready to give all my blood, drop by drop, if such is his will, with complete joy. Nothing in his service can be sacrificed, for all is perfect delight.
Okay, that's what she said. And then you might as well keep reading right there where it says they formed the Aurobindo ashram. Can you read what it says there every morning?
Every morning at the balcony, after establishing a conscious contact with each of those who are present, I identify myself with the Supreme Lord and merge myself completely in him. Then my body, completely passive, is nothing but a channel through which the Lord passes freely his forces and pours on all his light, his consciousness, and his joy, according to each one's receptivity.
Do you remember that vision she had, that dream where she was this big dress, golden robe, flowed out to all the people, and it supported them, it loved them, it nurtured them? You see, that's a key vision. And so this is developing, and she's describing it. This ashram means a spiritual community. Later on, this ashram got bigger and bigger, got up to 3,000, 4,000 people, and it became a city, Auroville, right? That's what I described right in the beginning before 2 or 3 people came. But we'll get to that again. Auroville, it became an actual city that was universal, a city that belongs to the whole world.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So just to back up, this is yoga she's doing, integral yoga, but it's very, some people think of yoga as very inward. You're looking inward, you're doing spiritual exercises. Her kind of yoga with Aurobindo, integral yoga means yoga that benefits your activity in daily life, that makes you a contributor to culture, that helps you uplift the human race, that includes the arts, sciences, education, along with all those other disciplines that are called yoga, right? That India has developed over thousands of years. That's integral yoga. In other words, yoga that's integrated with daily living to improve conditions in the world. They wanted to have an experiment that was successful. So like if one whole city can do this, even a small city, then there's hope for the world. That's sort of the idea. Okay.
You're not that clean, are you?
All right. Let's look at another thing that happened here. I'm going to sort of skip something. I have to show you something. That World War II. In World War II, she had the theory that Hitler was being influenced by a celestial being, an evil celestial being. And she felt like she was actually part of the war. She was fighting against the forces of evil in World War II. Okay, so remember she had this esoteric or occult background. part of that background is that there's good and evil forces in the world, and that the good forces can overcome and will eventually overcome the evil forces. So her and Aurobindo, I have to give you some history. Do you remember that India didn't like England, right? Because England was their oppressors. So in World War II, a whole lot of people in India thought, oh, I hope England gets beat in World War II. I'm not kidding. A lot of people in India had that point of view. Not the mother and not Aurobindo. You see, they said, where is this here? I'm reading in the middle of page 2. It says, Aurobindo and the mother publicly declared support for the Allied forces in defense of civilization. In defense of civilization. They saw Hitler as possessed by demonic forces, becoming an instrument of a figure they called the Lord of Nations, a dark, evil, celestial being. The mother claimed to make many spiritual interventions to help assure the Allied victory. You know, I have a secret for you. There's been some research on Hitler. Hitler had a spiritual orientation. It's almost like this is not a far-fetched idea, in other words, that Aurobindo and the mother saw him as more than a political dictator, a military dictator, an arrogant human being. He was actually a spiritual being trying to conquer the world, and that this would not be good. So civilization, human civilization was at stake. So Aurobindo and the mother said they were fighting spiritually for the victory of the Allies, the West, in World War II. You know, this is so dramatic, it would make a really good movie. There probably is a movie about all this somewhere, you know, but okay. So she fought in World War II. That is how she understood it and how Aurobindo understood it. They're both fighting, but it's spiritual work that they were doing. Okay. Guess what? The West won. Fearless. You know, and this surprised a lot of people in India. They didn't quite look at it the way, actually, you know, Aurobindo and the mother influenced public opinion in India. India kind of turned. Can you imagine how many people live in India and they're getting influenced? Oh, okay. The British and the French and the US better win this war, or else history's going to go down, you know, the tubes. Okay, so this is their interpretation of what went on.
Yeah.
All right. Who else can read? Dorothy, can you read where it says integral yoga? It's 1943. She's 65 years old. The mother is 65 years old, and she's going to live till she's 95. Can you read where it says she started a school? Oh, Dorothy, you're muted.
I'm having all kinds of challenges here. I'm sorry. Okay, she's 65. She started a school. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Later called Aurobindo International Center of Education. The curriculum was integral yoga, including spiritual disciplines. I'm sorry, my husband's on the phone. Humanities, languages, fine arts, sciences, engineering, laboratories, workshops, a theater and studios for drama, dancing, music, painting, etc. Life must be faced as a whole with all the ugliness, falsehood, and cruelty it still contains. But care must be taken to discover in ourselves the source of all goodness, all beauty, all light, and all truth, in order to bring this source consciously into contact with the world in order to transform it.
Wow, that's a quick summary of their school, what kind of a school they're trying to create. Oh my goodness, integrating all ordinary education with spiritual and trying to help transform the world, be a model of the oneness of the world. Okay, the possible oneness. And then remember I told you she had a chatting relationship with Indira Gandhi? I really love this. I got to read it myself. It says 1955, age 77. A series of deepening discussions began with Indira Gandhi, growing into the 7-volume book, Questions and Answers. Let me read this. All the nations are essentially one, she said, the mother. One and meant to express the divine unity upon earth through an organized and harmonious diversity. No human will can finally prevail against the divine will. Let us put ourselves deliberately and exclusively on the side of the divine, and the victory is ultimately certain. Then she pops in a little short prayer. Lord, thou hast willed, and I execute. A new light breaks upon the earth. I think I have a typo here. A new light breaks upon the earth. A new world is born. The things that were promised are fulfilled. So, you know, when I hear this, being sort of an interfaith scholar type person, she's sort of saying, you know, those promises that were made in all the religions that someday we're going to begin to get it together and we're going to have a golden age and we're going to have heaven on earth. She thinks that's starting to happen, right? She's contributing to that very deliberately. That's what I think she's sort of saying here. The promises are starting to be fulfilled. And earlier, that thing she read about Aurobindo, she saw him as evidence that God is trying to come down and lift us up, right? Through figures like him and through her. She feels like she's been called to kind of rise up and evolve and show the possibilities for human evolution, spiritual evolution. Okay, so, all right. So she calls this place the Aurobindo International Center of Education. Later on, it's right near the end of her life, last 7 or 8 years, she calls it Auroville. It's a whole city, not just a school. And it has a certain purpose. We'll get to it. All right, here we are, page 3 at the top. The founding and charter for Auroville. You see where I'm reading? The spiritual center, yeah. It says 1968, age 90. People see that? Bev, can you read it?
Sure. The spiritual center of the city is the Matru Mandir, or House of the Mother.
You pronounced it correctly. Oh, sorry. That's really cool. Okay, go ahead.
A symbol of the divine's answer to man's aspiration for perfection. Auroville is a mandala-like city with 4 zones: residential, industrial, cultural, and international. Beyond lies a green belt of agricultural and horticultural activity.
Keep reading, if you will.
The mother left her body, aged 95. If ever I leave my body, my consciousness will remain with you. Legal status and governing of Auroville. The Auroville Foundation Act of 1988 established a 3-tier governing system. The governing board, 7 prominent Indians in education, culture, environment, and social service. The International Advisory Council, 5 members selected by government, and the Residents' Assembly. And the current population is about 3,000.
Okay, so that's what Auroville is more or less like today. So it is part of India, but it's also part of the whole world, like a universal city.
And presumably her consciousness is still very much there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the same with this guy, Aurobindo, the 2 of them, right? Their ideas are there. You know, Aurobindo wrote a lot of books, and she helped him. He was writing, you know, he was a political revolutionary who believed kick the British out. This is way back, say, around 1910. Kick the British out. He was thrown in prison, Aurobindo was, and in prison, he felt like Krishna, the avatar, a Hindu avatar, came to him and said, I want you to lift India up spiritually, not militarily or politically. So that completely converted him. You see, this would make a fantastic movie. So he gets converted in 1 year in prison, comes out and says, okay, I'm going to write articles on the spiritual uplift and advancement of India and what India can give to the whole world. So all that writing, every day he's writing. This is becoming, these are journal articles that are part of a journal. And then later on, they become part of books and books and books and books, a whole lot of books. These are very fat books, the ones I list on page 2 at the top. The Life Divine, The Future Evolution of Man, The Synthesis of Yoga, The Foundations of Indian Culture, The Ideal of Human Unity, and the supramental manifestation. We're going to actually talk about what that might mean. Holy, okay. Oh, Sue, you're here finally. We kind of need Sue. Hi, Sue. She's coming in. All right. So friends, on page 3 and 4, I'm not even going to touch on that stuff. All of that is the background of the mother or Mirra's education. She learned all about occult spirituality. She learned about the cosmic tradition. She learned about the Hermetic tradition, which includes things like astrology and alchemy and medicine and Neoplatonism, that stuff that Hypatia was good at. That's related. The circle of existence, going back to where we came from, the source. Kabbalism, which is Jewish mysticism, that's also included in the education of the mother. She integrated all this stuff. And then top of page 4, I also mentioned the divine emanations. This is in Kabbalism. That's the belief that the infinite one overflowed into the world these good divine qualities, the supreme crown, wisdom, intelligence, beauty, love, foundation. You can look at all that. So Kabbalism is a very rich mystical tradition by itself. She mastered it. And then Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky's stuff. She also absorbed all of that, which was happening in the late 1800s, the late 1800s going into the early 1900s. At the bottom of page 4, I list a few Hindu concepts. I just want to show you the stuff that's at the bottom. The 4 traditional yogas. There's knowledge yoga called jnana, love or devotion yoga called bhakti, work or service yoga called karma yoga, and Raja yoga, which integrates those 3. Well, she, the mother, and Aurobindo integrated all those kinds of yogas with the rest of education, right? Spiritual education, cultural advancement. That's integral yoga, yoga that can actually transform the world. That's what they formulated. And they tried to say, here's a model of it. They weren't theoretical only. They were theoretical. They wrote a lot. But they also tried to say, here's a living example called Auroville. Right? Amazing stuff. Now, Sue, can you read on page 5 where it says integral yoga? Just sort of read that whole section if you would. Well, Sue, you're muted.
No,
Oh,
I'm just
you can't
unmuted,
read.
so I'm okay. Integral yoga, Aurobindo's and the mother's method of spiritual evolution and cultural transformation, integrating 4 classical yogas, adding meditative disciplines and cultural building initiatives, conscious and aspiring daily activity, continuing spiritual progress or evolution. As people differ, no one way suits all. Conscious human ascent brings divine spiritual descent and ultimate communion, Beatitude's kiss, or the life divine.
You know, if you see, I circled that with green and I put stars around it. That says in a nutshell what she's all about. Conscious human ascent, going up, brings divine spiritual descent an ultimate communion, beatitude's kiss, or the life divine. Oh my goodness. You see, that's the essence of what she and Aurobindo were all about. Now, what I have below this was very hard for me to figure out, but I finally thought I cracked the code and came up with their whole system. So that's Harold's theory about what they're talking about, right? I'm saving you from reading about, 50 books, but I might be wrong. You see, this is Harold's. I think I understand what they're saying. So this I'm giving you my guess now, but I have to unpack what I've given you. You see this stuff in bold print? Let me just read this. Movement downward from the top of these 12, let's call them the 12 levels of consciousness. Movement downward from the top might be called involution, emanation, creation, and the arc of descent. All those terms mean the same thing. God coming down to our level. Okay. Now, movement upward from the bottom, going down to the bottom, number 12. Movement upward from the bottom might be called evolution, spiritual development, moral advancement, and the arc of ascent. Ascent, going up. Wow. The boundaries between the levels are viewed as somewhat fluid. So there's danger in making a chart like mine. See, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 things, but they're not all that separate. They kind of morph into each other. Look at the bottom. This is really cool. This is a total synthesis. That's a very important word for them, the synthesis of all yoga. At the very bottom is something called matter in all its sub-levels, mineral or elemental realm, chemistry, physics, all that stuff. Then look, number 11, we're going up. Vitality, or the primal life principle in all its sub-levels, viral and bacterial forms. In other words, before that, you don't have life. Suddenly, you jumped up. Level 11 is life. Then look, 10, plant life. Oh, this is getting more sophisticated. Plant life in all its sub-levels. So this would have things like fungi or clover or even sequoia trees. Imagine a huge tree. That would be like the apex of the plant world. Oh my God. Then higher than that, number 9, the body or physicality or animal life in all its sub-levels. From very tiny little animals all the way up to very big animals. Oh my goodness. So those 4, 12, 11, 10, and 9, I have a bracket in green that says material or physical evolution. That's the name of those 4 steps, material and physical evolution. Now 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, the next 5 I call human evolution, right? You could put another little bracket saying human evolution or spiritual progress. And look what those are. Normal mind, this is where you and I are involved. We half recognize this stuff. Normal mind, higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, and what she calls overmind or the overmental. All of that is within human possibility, you might say, spiritual progress upward, a larger and larger consciousness. Then 3, 2, and 1, I have a bracket in purple, and I call it divine involution or emanation or creation. So this is let's go from the top down. Absolute reality is the divine realm, the mysterious divine realm that we can't really grasp. Unmanifest being. And she uses the term Satchitananda, that's in Hindu or Sanskrit. It means infinite knowledge, joy, and being. Infinite reality, infinite knowledge, infinite joy. Wow. All right. So it's in its unmanifest form, that's level 1. In its manifest form, that's level 2. In the West, we call that the Holy Spirit or the Word of God, or Sue, get this, the Logos. See, Sue, I'm really glad Sue is here. She actually has dreams about this kind of stuff. And she thinks the logos is the answer to all problems. She's right. I mean, see, because that logos thing, from there, everything else comes into the world, according to Neoplatonism, Hypatia, Aurobindo, the mother. A lot of the Baha'i writings sound just like this. A lot of the mystical writings of Sufis sound a lot like this too. Ibn Arabi and Rumi. All right, look down number 3. So the second level emanates the supermind or the supramental. Now, in Hindu terms, this is the avatar realm, right? So in other words, okay, you have the Holy Spirit up there in the number 2. I'm using Western terms. The next level down would be the revealer, the incarnation of the divine, or the embodiment of the divine, or the avatar, or the prophet, or the messenger. I'm using all these Western terms. Their term is the Atman, or universal self, or avataric power, the avatar. So this, in Hindu understanding, this is exemplified by Rama, a guy named Rama 4,000 years ago, then Krishna, who came maybe 600 years later, and then Buddha, who came maybe 900 years later. Those are 3 avatars recognized by Hindus that come from the Indian subcontinent. But it keeps on going. See, so right below that is the highest of the human realm, the overmind. So her experiment with Aurobindo was to set up a community that consciously grows up, right, toward the overmind, and is begging God to come down, right? So Sue, you and I are Baha'i, so we would say, well, guess what? We think that there was another avatar who came relatively recently in 1863. We say that's Baha'u'llah. So other religions say things like, well, that would be the return of Christ if it happened, or that would be the 5th Buddha if it really happened. And Muslims might say, well, that would be the promised one if it really happened. So, oh my God, they're sort of saying, well, we want to make it happen. We don't want to just sit here and twiddle our thumbs passively. We're trying to actually make as much progress upward as we can and invite the divine or ultimate reality to come down and meet us. Okay, friends, what do you think about all this? That's it. I've given you the whole thing. That's a quick summary of what the mother was all about, and Aurobindo together. It's all one system, they say. She's the feminine side of it. She outlived him. You know, he said that that's going to happen. He told her, your body is better than mine. You're going to live longer than me, and you're going to carry this thing forward, and you're going to actually make a city that you know, shows all this knowledge at work. That's what he said to her. And she said, she finally agreed. Okay, when you leave your body, I'll do the best I can to carry it forward, right? You'll be with us in spirit. I'll be there with them in body, and we carry it on. Okay, I hope I haven't lost anybody. I'm trying to make sense of all this.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Bev, what do you think?
I think it's great. I found, well, they were, for me, they were twin souls, right? They were one together.
Complementary or intertwined,
yeah.
or, you know.
Yeah, they are part of the one soul. And I think it's just a really, again, another beautiful story, but I could feel her presence when I was reading, so I wasn't bothered by reading. It came in stronger. And
There she is.
yeah, and she looked like she knew how to renew her body. You know,
You wouldn't believe, as a kid, she really liked tennis, and she kept playing tennis till she was about 87, right? And you're right. In fact, that's what Aurobindo was saying to you. He says, you know, your body's going to last longer than mine. That is a fact. And that's fine. That fits our purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll tell you another thing about her. She was married twice. And the second guy was totally into all this spiritual stuff with her, but he met Aurobindo and got jealous. So he left. His ego got hurt when he met Aurobindo. He could not keep
Right.
up with him. So he
Yeah.
he runs away. And he married another 2 or 3 women too, illegally. But see, the mother stayed there from 1920 on. She stayed in Pondicherry and died there, you know, having founded Auroville. I told people in the very beginning, see, in the 1960s, I met people in California who were totally into this stuff, Aurobindo, right? So I had started to learn a little bit about it then. I didn't know about the mother till later. And then I didn't do all the research for this course until only a few months ago. But she fits with what we're doing in this course, women mystics.
Right. Yeah, because Harold, in your other women mystics course, she wasn't in it, right?
No, she's new to me, relatively new. Yeah. But I think
Okay.
she definitely belongs. So you weren't here when I said this lady met Abdul Baha.
Oh, really?
You get my
Okay.
notes, go to page 1.
Okay, yeah,
And check
I
it out.
see it, 1913.
In fact, here, I want to read you just a little bit about this. She meets, and then Abdul Baha leaves Paris, and here's what she says. Abdul Baha took leave of us, and I know that many hearts will feel a great void and will grieve. Yet, only his body is leaving us. His thought will remain faithfully with us, and his unchanging affection will unfold us, and his spiritual influence will always be the same, absolutely the same for each of us.
Wow.
So that's what she said, having met. So that's why I think she's important for Baha'is and for just about anybody, because this is sort of ties up with a lot of other traditions. And she's integrating what I call the spirit or the esoteric or occult tradition. She's integrating that too into something. So, and I'm a believer the Hermetic tradition should be studied more. Hermes was not a Greek god, he was a prophet, I think. But his movement went underground. And she totally absorbed the Hermetic tradition, which you go back, I want to read you one line from page 3. Hermetic tradition believes that the world and the universe are a network of hidden forces waiting to be discovered. That's in bold halfway down on page 3 under Hermetic tradition. The world and the universe are a network of hidden forces waiting to be discovered. You know, in the Renaissance, this Hermetic tradition took over Europe, right? Do you know that Isaac Newton became a scholar of the Hermetic tradition? He totally believed all this. And so his science is like an attempt to find this network of hidden forces waiting to be discovered. You know, but when you study Newton, the Western science doesn't like to admit that he was spiritual. They think spirituality is bad and science is good, right? But the truth is Newton was onto the Hermetic tradition. And he actually translated some of the work of this figure, Hermes, who was known by other names in other cultures, Idris among the Arabs, Thoth among ancient Egypt. Enoch among ancient Jews. All right, so I'm just trying to say that was like a tradition that went underground that influenced mysticism, other religions. It influenced Islam, it influenced Christianity, it influenced the Renaissance, the birth of science. Super important stuff, but it sort of went underground. Okay, but this mother, Mirra Alfassa, mastered this tradition too. She brought this with her into her relationship with Aurobindo. And Aurobindo too had been interested in combining East and West, Cambridge education with all of his spiritual Indian education. And Sue, I told you, I don't know if you were here, but Aurobindo was in jail because he was a political revolutionary. But in jail, he said Krishna came to him and said, I want you to bring about a spiritual revolution, not a political revolution, right? He says, okay, I'll change my tactics. So that's how Aurobindo got into writing all this stuff. And then in 1920, the mother comes back to Pondicherry and stays there till the end of her life. Okay, what a story. Who else has any reactions to this? Dorothy, what do you think? Joan, what do you think? Sue, what do you think? Sukhmani, what do you think? Are you still here, Sukhmani? Oh, no.
Sorry, I was on mute. I am.
Okay, you're here. Dorothy, any reactions to any of this?
Oh, I don't know. I just fell in love with her. I'm sorry. I think she's a wonderful woman. She was a very wise spirit. I mean, all of the good words we can think of. I would like to have met her. Maybe I will someday.
Here's a note of reality. She said, I'm not an easy character to live with. She once said, that's why she said that she was trying to explain why she got divorced twice. And that she sometimes is very demanding of herself and others, but usually very receptive and warm and wise and kind. But sometimes she had a short fuse.
That's why I like her. She's just like me.
Oh,
the divorce things and all that other stuff.
The whole thing, the package.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. Oh.
You know, my friends in California in the when was this? Late 60s, early 70s, we're talking about the Aurobindo and the mother. You know, and I read Aurobindo. I had read one of those books, so I kind of knew about him. I didn't, but I said, how come they always talk about Aurobindo and the mother? Aurobindo and the mother. Now I'm learning about the mother. I'm filling in my understanding of the project, so to speak.
I just think it would have been really neat if we didn't have COVID, if we could go as a group and visit Pondicherry.
A field trip.
Yes.
A field trip to Auroville for this little women mystics class.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So Harold, did she have any children?
She had one little boy named Andre, and she
Did he
did a pretty good
survive?
job with him. And he supported her later in life.
Okay.
You know, she had a funny question for Aurobindo. When they first met, she said, you know, I have all these abilities and knowledge and learning. How come I was never a very good artist? Like she said, since you know my soul better than me, and I know your soul better than you, that's one of the things she asked him. And, you know, he sort of said, you are an artist, but you're an artist of consciousness. You don't have to worry about your art when it comes to painting on the canvas or the sculpture. You are so he reframed it for her. You're not a bad artist. You're a very good artist, but your medium is human consciousness. Wow, a spiritual artist.
Something you said that I wasn't aware of, and that is the Jewish conception of Hermes was Enoch.
Enoch. You know, he has a minor role in the Old Testament. He shows up maybe 2 or 3 times, but there's a whole bunch of stuff unpublished. It's called the Apocrypha.
Oh, yes.
There's books that didn't get in there.
Yeah.
And some of those, there's something called the Book of Enoch. And this is the same guy, Hermes, the Hermetic tradition, Enoch. You know, there was a Persian name for him too. He was called
Idris.
Hushang. No, that's the Arabic name. Arabic. He was Idris.
Idris is Enoch, right?
Yeah. Enoch in Hebrew, Hushang in Persian, Idris in Arabic. Idris is also in the Quran.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is
What
Harold's
year?
theory.
What year was Enoch, Harold? Do you know?
Nobody knows for sure, but it might have been 3000 BCE. It might have been 2000 BCE. It might have been 1500. Scholars, see, that's why people don't know what to do with all this. They say here's why I know it really happened, because Thoth in ancient Egypt, there was an architect, Imhotep. Okay, Imhotep was an actual, we know a lot about Imhotep. Imhotep said, my teacher is Thoth, who's a god, or I would say a prophet.
Mhm.
See, in those days, they didn't distinguish too much between living beings who seem to have spiritual powers and gods, right? So my theory is Imhotep was a student of Thoth, and Thoth is another name for this figure that the Greeks called Hermes, and made a god too. But the Hermetic literature is real literature, like it actually was generated by somebody, and I don't think it's purely mythological. So in other words, there's a prophet back there somewhere, and we don't know exactly when he was, but we do have a little bit of his teachings, and it's interesting. It fits with some of the major world religions, as well as this esoteric tradition. It's a lot like occult philosophy and theosophy and all this other stuff. Okay, that's Harold's theory.
Harold, how
please.
did the mother and Aurobindo meet?
In
Does it say-
1910, let me think. Let me go back to page one.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
That's all right. Okay, 1914. Age 36, with her husband in Pondicherry, met Aurobindo, 1914. So she was 36 years old at that time. And then she went away for 4 years to Japan and came back in 1920 and stayed forever. She went with her husband to Japan and then came back.
And he was a diplomat?
Yeah, her husband, a diplomat and a spiritualist too. See, he wrote about 10 books in this occult spirituality stuff.
What
And
nationality was he?
French. Paul
Okay.
Richard.
Okay.
See, but he fancied himself sort of a guru. And then when he met Aurobindo, he said, he was overpowered by Aurobindo, and he saw how much, his wife felt one with him. So he disappeared, right? And he married somebody else, and he even got suicidal for a while, they say. So she and her husband, when they stayed in Aurobindo, with Aurobindo for a while, for 2 years, they helped him start writing all these journals that eventually became books. And when they came back in 1920, they continued that process, and he split and she stayed with Aurobindo. And from then on, it's like they were together 30 years working together. And then she continued the work after he passed away.
They didn't marry. They weren't married.
No. This is a
Spiritual
relationship.
Yep.
Like in the Course, remember Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross? To me, it's very similar. They were a package deal.
Spiritually.
Yeah, spiritually speaking.
Was Richard the first or the second husband?
Second.
Who was the first husband?
A guy named Henry Morissette.
Okay.
It's all in the timeline. But anyway,
Yeah.
I did the best
Sorry, I
I
missed
could.
the first part.
This lady, 95 years,
Yeah.
and she wrote 15 volumes of stuff. 15 volumes, all her journals and talking with Indira Gandhi, 7 volumes, just her discussions with Indira Gandhi, all about moral spiritual development.
Did you read some of that stuff, Harold?
Yeah, we did. And that was, Sue, this has been music to your ears. I'll read it again. It's on page 2, and this is the summary of what she talked to Indira Gandhi about. This is amazing. Sue, you'll think I'm making it up.
Sure.
She says, all the nations are essentially one and meant to express the divine unity upon the earth through an organized and harmonious diversity. No human will can finally prevail against the divine will. Let us put ourselves deliberately and exclusively on the side of the divine, and the victory is ultimately certain. Then she throws in a prayer at the end, short. Lord, thou hast willed, and I execute. A new light breaks upon the earth. Sorry about my typos. A new light breaks upon the earth. A new world is born. The things that were promised are fulfilled.
Ooh.
So she felt like something new was in the world, and she wanted to build it deliberately and enable everyone to come to Auroville and learn how to make a city that's spiritual, and then go around the world and make more spiritual cities everywhere.
Has
That
that
was-
happened, Harold?
It hasn't
Yeah.
happened. As far as I know, there's no other Aurovilles. There's that one, right? You know, a cool thing, Woodrow Wilson's daughter goes there and gets all excited. Margaret Woodrow Wilson is her name. She talks to the mother, she talks to Aurobindo, she says, okay, I'm in for life, I'm staying here. She lived there until she died in 1944. She became one of the leaders of Auroville after that. And, you know, when I was in Berkeley, I was getting all these little pieces of stories about this, Auroville, Aurobindo, the mother. And so it's so cool to now finally, you know, make the notes here, right? And see the story. Very interesting. The parallels with the Baha'i faith to me are stunning too, but the parallels could be drawn between the spiritual renewal movement of Christianity or of Islam or Judaism with this, right? The idea that religion has to be progressive. It has to keep growing. It has to unite humanity. It can't be divisive, right? Yeah. You know, she was demanding, but she, in terms of her education, she said, you know, there's no one style or learning mode that fits everyone. Everyone is unique, a unique experiment. So she did not make anyone do anything. She tried to say, here's the possible curriculum. You move in and out of that according to the beat of your own drummer. Right? So it was a very wide open system, yet she did want you to keep growing. If you're part of Auroville, you got to keep growing and contributing. It's not just absorbing stuff. You have to make the world a little better with what you're learning. Joan, any reactions to any of this?
I just find it amazing to know that somebody like her has absorbed so much theory and then lives it.
Did
in
something
her-
with it.
Yeah.
I kept bumping into Unitarian Universalists that knew a little bit about this.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that we just looked at today. I know Joan because she's a Unitarian Universalist. I used to be a Unitarian Universalist minister. I knew her in my old church. We worked together.
Who?
Joan, right here.
Oh,
With Joan.
hi,
Yeah.
Joe.
It says Ev, but that, you see, she's using her husband.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
he's here too.
A lot of
right.
Unitarians
sure.
like this
You
stuff.
guys
too.
have been to my house.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been to her house. This is
Yeah.
really, yeah. It's Old Home Week.
Nice.
Okay, it's almost out of time, but I hope this made sense. Did you get all, you know, we sort of went all over the place, but I hope you get a cohesive picture about this lady.
I did.
Like, it's interesting that someone has is very spiritual, but then, like, is this different than, say, the other religions? Again, Harold, you and I happen to be Baha'i, so we think that's the spirituality for today. And yet there are very devout Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, so it's like everybody should be involved in building an ever-advancing civilization or looking toward spiritual and material progress. Like, we see the injustice in the world. So how do we work to getting rid of the injustice and being like, and sort of raising spirituality for everybody on the planet? But you
How do
look
we
at
do
this,
it?
I don't know, like, this is amazing. How come lots of people don't know about her?
Mhm.
Like, we should, as you say, we should all go to Pondicherry.
Yeah, why don't more people know? However, you know, some people live there a while and go away somewhere, do something, and are tremendously enriched by their exposure to Auroville, right? So it's more than just the people that live there now, maybe 5,000 people or so.
is it still happening? Are they
Oh, it
still
still exists,
teaching
yeah.
spirituality? So,
They call it integral yoga, and that pretty much includes standard education mixed with spiritual exercises and meditation.
mm,
And so yeah, so you said something, remind me, she would say, we got to end soon. But
yeah.
so just like Auroville is a city in the whole world, if you said, what is your religion? She might have said, universal spirituality is my religion.
Mhm.
She wouldn't have said Hindu.
Mm.
She would not answer that way. Or she would not say, oh, well, we've combined a little bit of this and a little bit of that. She wouldn't say that either.
Not syncretic or whatever.
She was trying, this is like,
Syncretistic?
okay, we're all religions or no religion or universal spirituality.
Yeah.
Something along that line is her answer,
Mm. Hmm.
very universal.
Mhm.
Sukhmani, you're still here. Good. Okay. She was our host because Kathy, she got a little bit sick and needed
Oh.
help from her assistant. Yeah.
Thank you,
Luckily,
Sukhmani. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
she gets a little bit of money from the Living Interfaith Sanctuary, a little job. She's
Awesome.
Kathy's official
Perfect. Yeah,
assistant.
no, she said you're hired. That's awesome.
Hired.
Perfect. Well, we have to say healing prayer for Kathy then.
Can you please, Sue, share that with
Oh.
us and then we'll go home.
Okay. Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Baha'u'llah.
That's beautiful. You sound like the mother when you share.
No, not quite. No, I'm not that advanced, Harold.
We have only one
We're
more
all
class.
striving, though. We are all
You're
striving.
striving. You're
It's all
striving.
good.
We have
It's all
only
good.
one more session, 2 weeks from now. Barbara
Okay.
Marx Hubbard. She used
Okay.
to be
Oh,
the
yeah,
last
she would-
one.
Yeah, she was on your list before. This
Yeah.
one is really interesting. You didn't have her before. I've
right.
taken this course 3 times.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
worth taking again and again. And
Oh,
one
it's good.
more. The lady who we're studying next, she only died like 2 years ago.
Oh
You
my
see,
word.
We
Okay.
started out with someone 2,500 years ago, Srimala, and we
Okay.
moved all the way up
Impressive.
until almost yesterday. That's amazing.
That's great. Love it.
Great.
Okay, good night.
Thank you, Harold.
Good night,
Okay.
folks. Stay
Good night,
safe.
Sukmani. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Dorothy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Joan.
Bye.